In this video, I'm going to show you how to store different types of data in your data store. So I got my gumballs right here. There's 25 of them. And then I have my visit count right here. You've been here 18 times. If I go ahead and try and get a gumball, that one disappeared. They disappear after 20 seconds. Let's get another one. 27. So we got 27 gumballs. When we leave the game, we want 27 gumballs. And then we want this to say, you've been here 19 times. So we'll stop it. Then we'll hit play. Cool beans, 19 times, 27 gumballs. I think that's what we said we were supposed to have. And we are storing multiple different types of data, going to different places, used for different things. And then I'll do another video for like equipment, like if you pick up a gun, if you're holding it, or if it's in your backpack, we'll put that in the data store too. Then you'll have a pretty good understanding of how this works. So let's go ahead and get a fresh world and get started with our expanded data store. All right, so I have a fresh world right here. I'm going to go to game settings. I'm going to save off my game. I'm going to call this data store video 2, right? And then I'm turning team create off because I have nobody else that I'm working with. We'll hit save. There we go. Now that we have the game saved, go to game settings again, go to security, enable studio access for API services. Make sure this is on or your data store won't store. You'll get errors. Save. Cool. I am going to put the script from the last video in the description, both of them, so that you'll have the visit count. We'll start from there. So let's go to ServerScriptService, hit that plus sign, add a script, and we'll call this GameMgr. So I'm actually just putting the text in the description. You actually have to make the files. So GameMgr. Cool. Now go to the description, look for where it says GameMgr, and we'll copy this. If I can get it, there we go. Control C, I know you can't see that, it's off screen. Get rid of that. And Control V, paste it. Cool beans. Now this is going to be my module script that's going to be the SessionUtils. Let's go ahead and save this name because it's got to match, right? Copy. And this is ServerScriptService. So go to ServerScriptService. See, I got that up there in that variable. ServerScriptService, hit the plus sign, module script. Make sure it's a module script. If that little Lego thing isn't there, it's not going to work. All right, I'm going to rename this. I'm going to do a Control V to make that SessionUtils that we saw in the require statement in the GameMgr to ensure that we can get it. Now go to the description again, and we'll go and get our SessionUtils. Control C to copy, and there we go, Control V. Now we should have a game that saves, right? We could try it, but you'll have to take my word on it. I don't have a lot of time. I don't want this to get too long and too boring. So we need to augment this because right now it's just saving our session count, how many times we've been here. We want to do more than that. We want to add a leaderboard, save off that data, and then be able to bring it back when we come back into the game. So I am going to go to the top here. I thought about putting the leaderboard stuff in my GameMgr, but I'm going to put it in my SessionUtils. I'm going to say local function add board, and the player is going to get passed in. So this is our add leaderboard for our players. Let's make a local variable called board. It's going to be instance new folder, and the player will be the parent, right? So we're putting a folder on the player. We need to call that folder. So we'll say board.name. We need to call Leaderstats, spelled just like that, all lowercase letters. That's going to make a leaderboard. Once we put a metric on it, it won't show up if there's no metric, but we're going to do that right now. We're going to make a metric called gumballs. Oops, I spelled that wrong. It's going to be our internal, oh my gosh, our internal currency of the game. So we'll say instance new, it'll be an int value, and that parent is going to be the board. So we're putting the gumballs on the board on the player, right? And we have to give it a name. This is going to be the display name. So gumballs name, and we're going to get tricky here. We're going to put a space in there. Gumballs. All right, that's going to add some complications, but I think you guys can handle it. So now we have a function to add the board, but we're not calling it. Where should we call this? I made this local, so I'm going to call it inside my session utils under initializePlayerData. Once we get our data, before we do our set async, I'm going to do a Control V, add board. All right, and that should add the board to our player. And then if there is information in there, we need to update the board. So before I test it, I think I'm going to update the board, even though it's still going to be 0, right? Because we're just starting out. Update board, I'm going to make that local too. I'm going to say local function update board, right? Player will be passed in because when we update the leaderboard, we're actually going to grab the player and then we're going to grab the leader stats off the player. So we're going to say hey, player leader stats. Remember we had that folder on there called leader stats. That's the leader stats. We can't do a dot notation for the gumballs because there's a space in it. So we got to use our brackets, square brackets, double speech quotes, gumballs. All right. And remember, this is an int value, which is kind of weird. You have to do this dot value. And then we're going to get our session data for the player. There we go. And then that is also going to have gumballs. And I know I'm using a lot of string literals here, which experienced programmers are not going to like. So I'm spelling these out rather than having a variable. I thought it'd just be more intuitive for people watching if they're not really adept at programming yet. So gumballs right here is not actually in session data yet. We have to make sure that we have that. This will work though. Let's go ahead. Now we have a data store. We're going to add gumballs to it. Let's copy this so we don't have any errors when we go to test our game, right? It's going to be easy if they're new. We could just put the gumballs in there. But what happens if we have like 100 players and we update our data, our game, and they already have data? We can't wipe their data out. We got to add to it. So I'm going to say if gumballs then. But I'm not really concerned if they have gumballs. I'm more concerned if they don't have gumballs. So I'm going to say if not session data player gumballs, then we need to initialize that. I'll do a Control V again, and then I'll make that 0. So now if they don't have gumballs, we're going to add it to their session data. All right. But if they are new, it's going to be easier. Oh, we got that space again. Rats. How do we do a key value pair in a table if there's a space in the key? We use this. Boom, right? And then we initialize this to 0 because they're fresh players, right? Here, they've never been exposed to gumballs before. Here, they're brand new, so it's going to be 0. Now, we can go ahead and do an update. Do we have an update? What did I call that? I forgot. Update board right there. Copy, go down here. I'm surprised the IntelliSense didn't grab it for me. Update board for the player. All right, let's try it. Let's see if we have any errors before we move forward because we don't have any data yet, right? So we'll say output, hit this. No errors. I'm here for the first time. That's cool. I didn't use the UI from the last video. If you want to have a welcome screen, look at the last video. I have a remote event that sends a UI up there. I just took that out. We're still doing our count though. And we have our gumballs right here. 0 gumballs. Let's go ahead and make it so that we can add gumballs to our game. All right, so I just turn that off. Let's get rid of this so we have more room. And I think I'm going to make a gumball. But I need to update it first. Right? I need a mechanism. This is updating the board. I need to update this session data when I collect gumballs. So I'm not going to do a local function. I'm going to do a function that I can call from my gumballs. I'm going to say SessionUtils. I'm just going to call this update stat. right? So the player, it's going to be a player stat. We're going to have the stat name, right? That'll be like gumballs. And then we'll have the value, because maybe we want a super gumball somewhere that's worth like 10, right? Not just 1. I'm going to get this thing right here. Control C. I'm going to paste that down there. And then I'm going to do, right? So we got our player. And then this isn't necessarily going to be gumballs. We're going to just call this stat name, right? Stat name. In this case, it will be gumballs, but I want this to be a variable because I want to use this for any type of stat that I have in the leaderboard, which is just one type right now, but you get the idea. And then we're going to plus equals the value, right? In our case, this is only ever going to be 1, but I might want to expand this. All right. So once we do our update stat, then let's go ahead and update our board. Update board for player. That'll work, right? There we go. I think that's good. Let's get a gumball. Oh, you know what? While we're here, let's do one more thing. Let's make a save loop. All right. And I'm going to call that from my game manager. So I'm also going to do a function. I'm going to prepend it with the SessionUtils so we can call it from the game manager, just like with our update stat. I'll do save loop, and I'm going to get everybody in the game and save them off every once in a while. So I'll say while true, do. We need to wait. Now there's limits to the data store. I'll put a link in the description for those limits. You don't want to overflood your data store. I'm going to say every 10 seconds. I might even go every 30 seconds or 60 seconds on a live game. You don't want to flood that. We'll say for player and data in pairs. We're going to do everybody in the session data. All right, so we're going to go through our session data in this for loop, right? This in pairs. This will be a player. This is going to be all their data. In this case, it's going to be easy because we don't have a lot of players, right? So we'll have the DS set async PLY user ID. So we're going to use the user ID as the key, and then the data we're going to save off. And then maybe what I'm going to do too is just wait a little bit in between each of these. Although we can do saves pretty quickly as long as we're changing our path. And this is our key to the data store. You can't save to the same person too many times. I think the limit's like 60 times. I don't know. I forgot. But go ahead and look it up in the link in the description. You have a limit of how many times you can save per player in the data store. Actually, for all the players too. You do have limits on these. We're not going to exhaust them. We're not even going to come close. All right, cool. We got to call this though, right? It's not being called anywhere. Let's go to Game Manager. Let's see. We'll go down here. We'll say spawn, Control B, save loop. We do this spawn so that we could do stuff down here, right? We'll do a little print statement, say, whoa, I made it. Whoa, did I spell whoa right? Whoa, I made it here, right? If you didn't spawn that, this would be an infinite loop. But the reason I'm putting it in here is because I don't want this to be called multiple times. That's why I'm not putting it in my SessionUtils. Every time we use SessionUtils, it gets called. So if we have a lot of game objects calling this, it's going to have too many of these save loops. But here, this only gets called once on server startup. So let's go to our data store. Let's get a part, sphere, right? This is going to be our gumball. Gumball. I spelled gumball. I'm on a roll today. I'm not doing too well with my spelling. Gumball. All right, let's make it like a gross color, something that only a kid would eat. Like, I don't know, Adler. Is that what Adler is? Let's make it smaller. Cool. And let's put a script on it. Script. We'll call this treasure. And what else are we going to do? On our treasure script for our gum, we want to get we want to get our session data. So I'm going to say local, what do we call it? SSS, session ServerScriptService. Let's get that first. Game, get session, ServerScriptService. And then we need our SessionUtils. That's what I was thinking. SessionUtils is require SSS SessionUtils. Now, the downside of using this require right here, we're making our game kind of tightly coupled, right? We are going to need this. We can't make this a model and have it run independently. So that's what tightly coupled means. You have a dependence on other objects in your game. But it is kind of nice because now we have one central place keeping track of our data. So I'm going to go with it. Let's get a gumball variable, right? That's just script.parent. What else do we need? I'm going to do a debounce. Oh, you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to get the player service, players, because we want to award a gumball to the player. So game, player service, players. Cool. And now let's get that debounce. Can collect equals true. We're going to get a local function on touch. That's how we're going to pick it up, right? Then we're going to have the other part. That's the part touching our part. So we'll get our gumball down here. See, it went down here. I was tricky like that. I'm going to go back to that function, and then I'm going to do, but I'll forget it if I don't put it here. I'm going to do this touched event, connect, and then I need my on touch. Whoops, get rid of all that stuff that accidentally got put there. Cool. It's just the function name. This will get called when something touches it. The other part will hopefully be like a foot or a hand or something, not the terrain, but we do have to check. So I'm going to say local player equals, we have our player service. Player service has something called get player from character. Well, if the other part is a hand or a foot, other part parent is going to be the character. All right. And if this is nil or if this is something else, it's just going to return nil here. We're not going to get an error. It's pretty safe. The get player from character is pretty cool like that. We'll say, oh, if player, then we want to get our SessionUtils, right? We'll do update stat. Cool. Now we have the player for it to go to. We have, see, it says gumballs. We need our gumballs right here. Oh, look at that. I can just copy it. I'm going to copy it like this though. Gumballs, just to make sure I don't spell it wrong. Oh, I didn't copy. You're going to have to type it out. Too good to be true. Gumballs. And then the value, we're just going to add 1, right? It's not a super gumball. And now I don't want anybody to pick it up again. I think I'll put that debounce up here above that SessionUtil update. Let's do a can collect equals false, which means we have to do this in our if statement. We have to say if player and can collect, then. So both of these have to be true. So it's going to start out true. We're going to be able to go in here. If we have a player and a can collect is true, we're going to make this false. Now nobody can get it anymore. That will prevent us from getting multiple hits. Then I'm just going to get my gumball and destroy it. Cool. All right. Nice. Let's try it out. Let's copy our gumball though. Control D, Control D. And let's also, here, let's put a print statement to see when we're saving. Make sure that's working. Let's do print, saving the data for, I will do the name of our player, ply.name. We only have 1 in that loop, right? So we should be all right. Actually, we don't even have to put name, but I'll keep it like that. And then, you know what else we want to do? When we leave the game, we want to do a final save. So go ahead and copy this. Control C. We're going to go down here. Boom. But We want this to be a regular player. Cool. And this data is not defined. We can use this. Control C. Boom. All right. I think we're done, right? This is my session utils. I don't know if I was tricky and I jumped over there too quickly. Yeah, there we go. We're good to go. Hit the play. Got some gumballs. Let's see if our output, you've been here 2 times. Awesome. Boom. 2, 3. Now I'm going to let this run again because with Roblox Studio, if you shut down, sometimes player removing is too fast to do that final save. So just make sure that it saves after your last gumball when you're in Studio. Don't worry about when you're playing in your real game because the server will run a little bit after the last person has left. It'll shut down, but not instantly like Roblox Studio. Let's try this again. See if we got our 3 gumballs. We do. We got 3 gumballs and we were here 3 times. That's a coincidence, but it's pretty cool. So go ahead and give that a try. Hopefully I didn't go too fast or anything. I will see you in the next video. We'll save off a weapon too. That'll be cool, whether he's holding it or whether it's in his backpack or whether he doesn't have one at all.